Greetings, dear viewer. This channel explores the painful reality of marital infidelity and its consequences when one partner betrays the other. If, like me, you believe in true family values and strongly oppose cheating, consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Now, let's begin. Betrayal never reveals itself all at once. It creeps in quiet and insidious, unraveling everything piece by piece. That evening, I found myself waiting for Madison. She had gone out with friends, saying she needed space. But as the minutes stretched into hours and the clock edged past midnight, my patience thinned, giving way to a growing unease. When the door finally creaked open, she stumbled inside, and an icy knot tightened in my stomach. Her hair was a wild mess, as if she walked through a storm, and her clothes hung off her body, wrinkled and disheveled. But it wasn't just her appearance that unsettled me. It was the dampness in her eyes, a telltale glisten of unspoken guilt. I stood frozen, my thoughts racing. A foreign cologne clung to her, sharp and intrusive. It wasn't hers. It wasn't mine. It belonged to someone else. Without a word, I helped her bed, carefully cleaning her up as questions burned on my tongue. "What happened, Madison?" My voice was strained, barely holding on to composure, while my insides trembled. I needed answers, but her eyes, glassy and unfocused, refused to meet mine. Through the haze of alcohol, her words came slow and slurred. It didn't mean anything. Just once. "I'm sorry." The confession hit like a physical blow, sharper, deeper than anything I had ever felt. Sorry? For what? I wanted to demand the truth right there, to tear through the lies, but I couldn't. Not when she was like this. Swallowing the lump in my throat, I pulled the blanket over her and quietly left the room. Despite my desperate hope that things weren't as bad as they seemed, a gnawing instinct whispered the truth. Something had happened, something I could never take back. By morning, there was no more hiding from it. The first rays of daylight were unforgiving as Madison stirred, groaning as she clutched her head, trying to piece together the remnants of the night before. Sleep had been impossible for me. My mind had replayed every moment, every slurred word, every scent that didn't belong. She shuffled into the kitchen, still dressed in the wrinkled clothes from the night before, her eyes red and exhausted. I sat waiting silent, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. On the table before me lay the evidence. Photos I had taken in the stillness of the night. A close-up of the faint stains on her dress. A shadow of a handprint near her waist. They spoke volumes, louder than any excuse she could offer. I hadn't taken the pictures to punish her. I had taken them because my mind refused to accept what my heart already knew. "Do you remember what you did last night?" My voice trembled, filled not with anger, but with something far worse, a hollow, aching devastation. Her face crumpled, guilt weighing down on her like an unbearable force. She didn't need clarification. She knew. And then she broke. Sobs racked her body, her shoulders shaking as she choked out the words. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake. A mistake. And yet, some mistakes change everything." I repeated the words, the taste of them bitter on my tongue. You don't just fall into something like this. You made a choice. She hadn't tripped into infidelity by accident. She had walked into that bar, drowned herself in alcohol, and willingly let another man into her life. Madison tried to explain, to shift the blame onto the drinks, the moment, the circumstances. But her tears no longer reached me. They felt empty, just like her excuses. And that's when it struck me. She wasn't apologizing to me. She was trying to ease her own guilt. That realization cut deeper than anything else. She didn't fully grasp the destruction she had caused, not just to our relationship, but to the life we had built together. I couldn't bear to hear another word. Rising from my seat, I locked eyes with her and said, "I need some air." Then I walked out, leaving her alone with the wreckage she had created. Betrayal doesn't simply fade. It lingers, embedding itself into every thought, every unanswered question. I tried, really tried, to quiet the doubts, but they gnawed at me. Who was he? Why her? How long had it been happening? Her confession, slurred and fragmented, had given me a place to start. Among the jumble of words, one name surfaced. Nolan. That was all I needed. A quick search online led me to him. Nolan was exactly the type I expected. Smooth, self-assured, effortlessly charismatic. The kind of man who could weave his way into anything or out of everything. But what unsettled me most was that he wasn't some random stranger. Madison knew him. She followed him. He followed her. They had a connection. Digging deeper, I uncovered something even more disturbing. Nolan was married. He had kids. His social media was filled with snapshots of family vacations, birthday parties, lazy Sunday mornings. He had a picture-perfect life. So did I once. But I needed to know just how deep this betrayal ran. That night, while Madison slept, I took her phone. My hands were steady as I unlocked it, though my chest felt like it was caving in. And there it was. Their messages weren't lengthy, but they were damning. Nolan had known she would be at the bar. Their conversation wasn't extensive, yet it didn't need to be. It was enough. Enough to tell me this hadn't been a spontaneous mistake. It had been deliberate, planned. I could barely hold the phone as I read through their words. This wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. They both knew exactly what they were doing. That night, I made my decision. Nolan's wife deserved the truth. She needed to know what kind of man she was married to. And after I confronted him, I would deal with Madison. The divorce was already in motion, but before I could fully let go, I needed closure. I had his name. I had proof. And I had a plan. This wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. If my marriage was crumbling, his wouldn't remain untouched. I wrestled with the decision of whether or not to reach out to his wife, Aurora. But in the end, I couldn't shake the feeling that she had the right to know. Carefully, I composed a message, choosing my words with precision. Then I sent it. She responded within hours. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe downtown, a neutral space where emotions could be contained. When I arrived, Aurora was already there. She sat at a small table, dark hair pulled back, dressed simply. There was an air of quiet strength about her, though nervousness flickered in her expression. She greeted me with a faint smile, her eyes brightening slightly when she mentioned Nolan. It only made what I had to say even harder. I didn't sugarcoat it. Your husband had an affair with my wife. My voice was steady, unwavering. The smile vanished instantly. Shock crossed her face, her hands trembling as she set her coffee down. The weight of my words hung between us, heavy and inescapable. For a moment, she didn't speak. She simply stared, her gaze locked onto mine, struggling to process the devastating truth. I had laid everything bare. Slowly, I reached into my bag and pulled out the evidence I had meticulously gathered, screenshots of their conversations, photos from that night, even a secret recording where my wife spoke his name, without hesitation. I placed each piece before Aurora, giving her time to absorb the weight of the truth. As she flipped through the photos and listened to the recording, I watched the color drain from her face. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, though she fought to keep them at bay. She wasn't ready to break. Not yet. She sat frozen, her lips trembling as she struggled to process the reality before her. Finally, she found her voice, soft yet unwavering. "Thank you for telling me," she whispered. I gave a brief nod and rose from my seat. There was nothing more to say. As I stepped out of the cafe, emotions swirled inside me. Anger, an odd sense of relief, and a lingering trace of guilt. Whatever happened between Nolan and Aurora now was no longer my concern. My focus had shifted to what truly mattered. Taking back my life, cutting ties with Madison, and walking away from the ruins of what we once had. Returning home felt like stepping into a stranger's house. The warmth that once filled the space had vanished, replaced by a hollow, unbearable emptiness. Madison was barely a shadow of the woman I had known, crushed beneath the weight of her own remorse. It showed in her eyes, in the way her shoulders sagged under invisible burdens. She made desperate attempts to fix what she had shattered. At first, there were endless tears. She begged me to listen, to let her explain, to give us another chance. "I'll do anything," she swore. "Counseling, therapy, whatever it takes." But every time I looked at her, All I saw was a betrayal burned into my memory. She left notes. Small, pleading messages slipped into my coat pockets, tucked beneath my pillow. I love you. I swear I'll never hurt you again. Please don't give up on us. At first, I read them, but eventually I stopped. She tried cooking my favorite meals, hoping that familiar flavors might stir something inside me. But I couldn't sit across from her at the table and pretend. Nothing was the same. Part of me wanted to believe her, to dig deep enough to find forgiveness, to salvage what remained of our life together. But no matter how hard I tried, the image of her in another man's arms poisoned every thought. The trust we had built, the foundation of everything we shared, was gone. One night, she confronted me in the living room, her face swollen from crying, her voice raw with desperation. "Please, Ryan," she sobbed. "I love you. I'll do anything to fix this." For the first time in days, I really looked at her. "I don't think you can." My voice was calm, steady. The words landed like a crushing blow. She collapsed, her body racked with uncontrollable sobs, clutching her chest as though she could physically hold herself together. Maybe in that moment, she finally felt a fraction of the agony she had inflicted on me. In the days that followed, silence filled the air. No more shouting, no more pleading, just a suffocating quiet, thick with the remnants of what had been lost. I had hoped, however faintly, that the silence would bring clarity, that maybe, just maybe, it would lead to some kind of resolution. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Some fractures can never be mended. In that silence, I started preparing for what I knew was inevitable. I sifted through our finances, organized important paperwork, and began mapping out a future that no longer included her. I reflected on our past, the highs and lows, questioning whether any of it was worth holding on to. One morning, I found her sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the floor as if searching for answers hidden in the carpet. When she finally noticed me, her red-rimmed eyes locked onto mine, exhaustion and sorrow etched into every feature. In my hands, I held the divorce papers. I hesitated, not because I doubted my decision, but because of the weight of its finality. "You made your choice that night," I said, my voice steady. "This is mine." I placed the papers on the coffee table. She tensed, her trembling hands reaching for them. "Ryan, no, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We can fix this. I'll do anything." Tears streamed down her face as she collapsed to her knees, gripping my hand with desperate force. Her sobs filled the space between us, raw and pleading. "Don't do this. Please don't throw us away." But the truth was, she already had. With one selfish act, she had destroyed years of trust, and without trust, there was nothing left to salvage. I gently pulled my hand free, my resolve unwavering. "I can't," I said softly, shaking my head. "I've tried, Madison. I've thought about this from every angle, but I can't see us the same way anymore." There was no anger in my voice. It wasn't needed. The finality in my words was enough. I turned and walked away, leaving her crumpled on the floor, her sobs echoing in my wake. A flood of emotion surged through me. Grief, yes, but also an unexpected relief. For the first time in days, I could breathe. This wasn't the ending I had imagined, but it was the one I needed. It's strange how something you once thought would last forever can vanish, leaving behind only emptiness. That was my reality. I walked away from that marriage a free man, though freedom was what I had envisioned. For weeks, I couldn't bring myself to step into our bedroom. Her scent still lingered there, tied to memories I wanted to forget. Instead, I slept on the couch, haunted by the past. But gradually, things changed. I stopped noticing the spaces she had left behind and started imagining new possibilities. I rearranged the furniture, painted the walls, and reclaimed the house as my own. I wasn't just rebuilding a home. I was rebuilding myself. The wounds she left didn't disappear overnight. The scars remained. But with time, they hurt less. And in their place, I found something I hadn't felt in years: peace. As for Madison, I have no idea where life took her. Once the papers were signed, we cut all contact. I heard whispers that she struggled to move on, that life hadn't been kind to her. People say time heals all wounds. I disagree. Time doesn't erase pain. It teaches you how to live with it, how to grow around it. For me, that meant embracing solitude. I would rather live in quiet contentment than in a marriage poisoned by betrayal. And as for Madison, I can only hope she found a way to live with her choices. Not for my sake, but for her own. In the end, we both lost something. I lost the woman I thought I knew. She lost the life we had built together. But the difference is, I gained something far more valuable. I found myself, and that, above all else, was worth every painful step. And that concludes this story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. May the Force be with you,